All right, listeners, welcome back to the Voice of Putnam County Business. I'm here alongside Nat as always. Nat, is it just me, or do you just get more excited and more pumped up and more motivated every podcast that we do?
Nick, I think it's you. I think it's our friendship. I'm delighted to see you. It's
Always.
great fun doing this, particularly when we have another great guest today. I'd like to introduce to our listening community Brett Yarris, who is the CEO of the Behavior Movement, who's going to tell us a lot about what he's been doing. And that's no small feat because this man is doing a lot of things. And we best start you by just trying to tell us a little bit about the Behavior Movement.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thank you guys very much for having. First of all, an amazing voice for her.
We have been, that's the case.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Behavior Movement's actually the first company that I started and got involved with, and it actually goes back to the beginning of my career coming out of college, which
But are you a local guy?
I am. I live here in Carmel Hamlet.
Yeah.
And I've lived or been a part of the community since I was in college. My wife went through the Carmel Central School District, and I met her while I was at college, and then have been a part of the community pretty much ever since. So, but yeah, I mean, when I graduated college, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. In fact, I graduated with a degree in liberal studies, which, to be clear, is not a degree in like George Soros and Hillary Clinton.
Right.
It's essentially the adult version of undeclared.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't want this guy's all trained up in automotive science.
Yeah. So, coming out with a degree like that, I really didn't know what I wanted. The only thing I knew I wanted to do was coach football.
Yeah.
Because that's what I, always been involved with. In fact, while I was in college, I was a coach here at Carmel High School. I coached football here.
Awesome.
And I also was one of the school district's first ever lacrosse coaches when we brought lacrosse as a sport to Carmel School. So I'd always wanted to do coaching and stick with that. And when I graduated, there was an assistant football coach opening at Fox Lane in Bedford, which is in Westchester County.
Yep.
And when I applied for it, they were like, hey, listen, you can't just be an assistant football coach. You have to do something else for the school. And so the only thing they had available was a one-to-one aide for a young person with autism. And, I'm 21. I'm just out of college. I don't know anything about special ed or autism. The only thing I heard was all I have to do is follow this kid around all day, and then I get paid for coaching football. So I was like, yes, easy, done. 3 weeks in, I was ready to quit. And it honestly was a really difficult situation because I don't know that I was adequately prepared for what it really entailed to be a good one-to-one aide and to really provide support the way that these young people need it. And so I actually had reached out to my godfather, who's also my business mentor, and I was like, listen, I need to get out of here. This is not for me. He had been very involved with ADP, the payroll company, and he was able to get me an interview there. And I got an interview at ESPN and was looking for my way out. And I made it to the final round of interviews for both, and they both offered me a job. And I said to my uncle, I said, hey, which one do you think I should take? And he said, I think you should stay at the school. And I said, I'm not sure that you properly understood the assignment.
That was not the answer
trying to get
I was
away from.
seeking.
But he actually said something to me that has stuck with me really ever since, which was, you're 21 years old. The dollar is going to be there for you to chase whenever you want it. Right now, you have an opportunity to kind of learn something about your fellow person. Stick this out for the year, and then we'll reevaluate everything. And so I did. And what ended up happening was, as I committed to trying to really understand how to be helpful, I started to understand the science of special education. I started to understand the science of behavior. And I ended up pursuing a master's. I got my master's degree in special ed, and then I went on to get further advanced degrees in behavior science. And so I then became the head teacher of the room that I was a one-to-one aide in. And when that happened, I began to see a lot of the challenges that public schools have with providing some meaningful, lasting support for this population. And so I actually was like, hey, I want to give this a shot at the private school. I got an opportunity in a private school setting to be a behavior case manager. I did that. I helped that school go through a state approval process. I've been on both sides of the table, administratively as a teacher and advocate, and that wasn't great either. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to start my own company. I'm going to do a company that focuses on physical education, fitness, rec and leisure skills for this population, because neither the public or private school setting is really doing it in a meaningful way. And the way I thought about it was, we're all focused on the special needs population from the time they get their diagnosis to the time they age out of school services, which is around 22, 23 years old now.
Yeah.
And when they get to that age, everything stops cold turkey. These parents are often left in a lurch with really not a lot going on. There are great organizations like ARC in Mid-Hudson over here that do a really good job. They do the best they can, but they would be the first ones to tell you that they could use a lot more support and help. And so the way I thought about it was fitness, rec and leisure. These are things that these guys are going to need when they're 40, 50, 60 years old.
Sure.
Right. And when then I broke down the numbers, we mentioned my propensity for research and data, right? I broke down the numbers, and we would all agree that as Americans, we have a health crisis. We have an obesity crisis in this country, a chronic illness crisis in this country for the average American citizen. When you look at the special needs population, their rates of obesity, type 2 diabetes, and other chronic illnesses are 30 times higher than the average American, which is already significantly higher than the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And so I really felt that the behavior movement could really serve that purpose. And so for the last 10 years, I've been the CEO and co-founder. I co-founded the company with my uncle, the one who told me to stick it out. And together for the last 10 years, we've been running it, and we've served dozens and hundreds of clients and families of everyone from, what we would say is like a nonverbal sort of severe case of autism to kids who present very typically but have some challenges neurologically or have some challenges emotionally, and we provided great mentorship to them over the years. And so that was really the start, and has been this ongoing process for me in the business world. And there's been a few other projects in between there.
So there's something about, I thought I heard something about the NFL. How'd you get the NFL?
Yeah. So that's actually where there was an intersection between the behavior movement and then another company that I co-founded. So the behavior movement, I began to work with athletes because, as I said, coming out of college, the only thing I knew I wanted to do was coach football.
Yeah.
And so that desire that has never left. And so I had the opportunity to work with a high school student in Connecticut who had already committed to a Division I program. And I began to use the same behavior science, the same science and methodology that I used to work with other behaviors and apply it to his technique. And he was going to a college where he was going to redshirt. They were going to redshirt him because he was very raw. And then we worked all season, and they ended up not needing to redshirt him.
Wow.
And he then played. And when he was a junior, he recommended me out to his teammates at his college, who ended up getting drafted into the NFL, who then recommended me to their agents, who then recommended me to other clients.
Wow.
And then he ended up getting drafted, and he's a 2-time Super Bowl champion with the Kansas City Chiefs. And I actually just got back from Dallas last week from a training session with him. And so that's another thing, that the behavior movement does.
I know my Chiefs pretty well. Who's that?
That's Lucas Niang. Yeah, he's a right tackle.
No, when it gets down to the right tackle.
Once you get, that's everybody. Once the ball leaves the quarterback's hand, you have no idea what's
The
going on.
O-line doesn't get much credit, unfortunately.
Yeah. So there's that, and then that actually led to the other company I was a big part of, which is Pro Football Network, which was a football media company. And, my involvement there was to try to bring my experience working with NFL players, agents, and then coaches, and being able to say, hey, like, we can be a credible media network, because you got the talking heads, which is basically like the political networks, right? ESPN now is like just CNN and MSNBC and Fox News, where it's just two guys screaming at each other about things that don't matter to the actual athletes.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to bring the media scape back to the men underneath the helmet. We forget that these are not just gladiators.
Yeah.
For our entertainment purposes, these are real live human beings who have some real stuff going on that made them the men that they are. And that was just a really great experience. I had a great time with that company. We bootstrapped it the entire way, no outside investment. And, it kind of just took a life on its own when we broke our first story, when Larry Tunsil, a right tackle or left tackle at the time, got traded to the Houston Texans from the Miami Dolphins. And we kind of broke that, and that put us on the map. And then we got Trey Wingo to come over from ESPN.
Wow.
And then Trey and I actually co-hosted a podcast together called More Than Football, where we sat down with legends, Steve Young, Kurt Warner, Teddy Bruschi, Tony Boselli, Archie Manning, and we
I don't know why.
and we talked with all of them, and it was a great opportunity for me because Trey's the most knowledgeable football guy I've ever met. Like, he just knows everything. He's got stats that
gives
go
that
back to
impression.
He's incredible. He's just a great guy. He was a great mentor to me in that space. And but I brought the behavior science element to it. I wanted to know what made these men great, what made them successful on the football field. And you hear, there's a great story from Tony Boselli, who, his career was cut short by injury. And he just got into the Hall of Fame a couple of years ago. He was the first ever draft pick of the Jacksonville Jaguars franchise, a left tackle, by the way. And also now their first Hall of Famer. And I actually flew out to the Hall of Fame game, which is every August. It was the year he was getting inducted. And Trey and I were supposed to go and sit down with him. Trey's flight got canceled. And so Trey's like, you got to talk to him about this. He's like, because now I'm doing the solo for the first time. Yeah. And it's mere hours before Tony Boselli is about to put on the gold jacket for the first time. It's actually hanging in the room that I'm sitting in with him. I'm sure and it was amazing. And he told me this remarkable story. I'll never forget it, because it really brought home the idea that we're all just people living our lives, whether we're football players, politicians, special ed teachers, it doesn't matter, right? And he told the story, his career was cut short from injury. He was really depressed that his career was over. He had always identified himself as a football player. That's how he knew himself. Mm-hmm. And one day he found himself sitting on the floor of his bathroom having a breakdown, and his wife came in. I'm gonna get choked up retelling it. His wife came in and she sat down with him, and he's like, I can't provide for us. Like, I don't know what we're gonna be able to do. The life that I've given you is over for me, and I don't know who I am or whatever. And she sat with him and she said to him, she said, I don't care what you do, and I do not care where you are. What I care is that we're together, and if we're together, we'll be able to do anything. And he's crying, I'm crying. It's like, and it was just...
Me and Nick, we're soft touching.
It was just this remarkable moment of humanity. And so those are some of the great things about what Pro Football Network brought to me, and I hope what I was able to bring to it. And then it got sold in 2023, and I took my exit. Trey took his exit. We got him to be a co-owner with us, and that company's still going on. They're doing their thing, what they're doing now, and Trey and I are doing some other projects in each.
Sure. We got ourselves a real entrepreneur.
I mean, this we usually cut it about a half hour. This could be a long one because you've really done a lot. Yeah. How old are you?
I'm 35.
Yeah, in a short period of time. Wow. I mean, that's incredible.
It's all, for me, it's been about recognizing when there's been opportunities and being, confident enough to kind of see where they'll go, take that kind of a risk. I will tell you, when Pro Football Network came across my desk, it was a big risk because it was really just a blog at the time. Mm-hmm. I like to say that I was a co-founder in it because when it became a legitimate LLC company, I was a named owner, but it actually had come to me from these three Miami Dolphins fans who were not living in Florida. One was in Ohio, one was in Connecticut. It was like all over the place. But they had this really great idea of what they wanted to do. They were fans that wanted to see. Actually, this is all documented, by the way, in a YouTube docuseries that we shot called The Rise of PFN, if you want to know the whole story. But they brought it to me, and I thought I could help and bring my experience. And it was just a really, really cool opportunity, but it was risky because there was no pay involved. I wasn't getting paid. In fact, the whole time I was there, I didn't collect a salary until like the very end, before we sold it. And it really was just about the exciting part for me was that we were building something, we were creating something. And I think like anyone who's really an entrepreneur, that's the thing that excites you. Yep. It's the creative phase, how are we going to structure this? What's our pace, our pay model going to be like, and all those types of things.
And it's a serial thing. By that I mean you can't just do one.
Yeah.
You got to keep going.
Yeah,
right?
Look, there's been some other things that have been sort of presented to me to get involved in, and I've either sometimes taken an advisory role. Like once we sold PFN, I was advising for other startup football media companies, the 33rd Team, which was Mike Tannenbaum's company. He used to be the GM of the New York Jets and the Miami Dolphins. And some other stuff that, I took some conversations, had some good times with, and some other projects that have come up too. And, those are things that sometimes you have to say no to because they're not the right fit. But
Now, were you still doing your behavior movement at the same time?
yeah. So, what do they say about entrepreneurs, right? We're the only people that are willing to work 100 hours a week so that we don't have to work 40 hours a week for somebody else.
Yeah. Sure.
And that was me. I was, and that's where I talk about where it's like, it seems like a great opportunity, right? It's something I want to pursue, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't take a toll on my family.
Sure.
And I remember when our first article got its first 1,000 page views, right? And we thought that was the mecca, right? We'd go on to get tens of millions on a single piece. But I remember we got our first 1,000. I was sitting in my old house with my wife, and my daughter was just a couple of years old. And I was like, Chris, we got our first 1,000 page views. And she's like, how much money went into our bank account? And I said, nothing. She goes, talk to me when that changes. So it's like, those are and it's, it took a while, for everybody to kind of see where it's going. And sometimes, when you're not conditioned to be entrepreneurial, when you're not conditioned to take those risks, we're always conditioned to see what's right in front of us. What's the benefit to me today? And I think that's why entrepreneurs make, great leaders in other areas, because they're able to kind of see what's the benefit coming down the road.
Was your uncle the only entrepreneur in your family, or did your dad, or
No.
where else does your entrepreneurial spirit come from?
Yeah, I think my dad always had a good idea about things he wanted to do. I think it was always tough financially to take those risks, right? Because that's another real component.
Yeah, of course it is.
And, my parents got divorced when I was 8. And so I lived full time with my mom, and, she made $30,000 a year. I grew up, we lived poor, in Long Island, Mastic Beach of all places, which at the time was one of the most dangerous towns in New York. And, it was a struggle. I remember in the winter, I remember in the winter how tough it was for me to just get out of bed because we didn't put the heat on because it cost a lot of money, And I think what was great about that experience was I understood struggle, I understood hardship, I understood having to make those kinds of sacrifices for my mom. And I think my dad always had those same ideas of he wanted to do certain things, he wanted to create certain businesses, but I think financially, he always had to weigh, was that risk worth it, because he had a family at that point.
Sure.
My uncle was certainly always had an entrepreneurial mindset. Always was trying to figure out how he could provide value in different ways. In fact, he became the guy that everyone in our family, even in-laws come to when they have a question about their own businesses or things they should do in their lives.
Uncle Guido, what's his first name?
Glenn, Uncle Glenn.
Yeah,
Uncle Glenn. Shout out to Uncle Glenn. I just saw him actually a couple hours ago.
Cool.
So he really kind of, and I think that was really the genesis of it, though, was that moment when I said to him, hey, I can work at this company or I can work at this company. And he almost really challenged me to have a completely different experience than what I was accustomed to. And then over time, I think when I said to him, I said, hey, this sucks. I don't like what the school's doing here. I think we can be doing it better. And he was the one that was like, so let's do it better.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just takes that one person to say, hey, let's do it better.
Brett, you were offering a lot of good lessons to our audience. Thank you. You're on a roll here. Tell us how you feel about Putnam County these days, and because your activism is growing. Give us an update on your next couple of activities.
I would say this is like the next project that's come across my desk, and actually this one I will blame on my wife because she volunteered me to do this. But full transparency, I am currently a candidate for the Putnam County Legislature, running in District 5, which is Carmel Hamlet and like the Hillendale, Sparrow Ridge, Fairways, Lake Carmel area of Kent. I did it because I have a young family. I have a wife. I have 2 young kids. We bought our house in 2020 with a less than 3% mortgage rate, so we're not going anywhere for a long time.
Yeah, right.
We're going to be here for a couple decades at minimum. And, like I said, I've been around the community. I've coached and worked at the high school. I know so many of the people, in Putnam County. We're happy to make this our forever home. That doesn't mean we don't want to see it be a little bit different. That doesn't mean we don't want to see it be improved a little bit. And so, I said, hey, especially Carmel Hamlet right here where we're sitting.
Yeah.
Right.
Why? Because it gets lost in the shuffle.
It does. I think, when we, you hear the town of Carmel.
Yeah.
But you're conditioned to think of Mayapack. And that's because a lot of the real downtown feel of a downtown area for your town, Mayapack has that. You know, Carmel Hamlet doesn't really have it. It's got this wonderful building that we're sitting in now. I think is a hidden gem, and it's got the strip mall across the street from
What's
us.
the name of the building we're sitting in right now?
Promenade on Sixth.
Oh,
where we're sitting
yeah,
right now.
Hold on,
you know what?
Brett, hold on.
We should
So-
stop for a minute. The promenade on Sixth, and without a certain lady that goes with that, but good of you to point that out. We like being
it
here.
is. I mean, you walk in here, right? It's got several small businesses, and I think that's what you want to see. And while I don't begrudge the businesses that are lined up on Fair Street and Glenada Avenue currently in Carmel Hamlet, everyone's got a right to make a living, and
Yeah.
and the Putnam County offices are right there, right? So it makes sense that there's a lot of attorneys and accountants and everything else. It also just doesn't help it become a nice family-friendly downtown. And I think there's a lot of families here. My neighbors, we talk. There's a group of dads on our block that get together every couple nights. We throw back a couple beers, we watch the games together, and we talk about what's going on with our kids and the neighborhood we live in. And we talk about that. If you want, in Carmel Hamlet specifically, if you want to go have a great night out with your family, you've either got to drive 15 minutes into Mayapack,
Yeah.
or you got to drive 15, 20 minutes into Patterson. And there's nothing for us to just park your car a couple minutes away from your house and walk and enjoy. And that was really the genesis of what I wanted to kind of see and how we could be creative, because I think it is going to take creative and innovative solutions. I think if you try to play the same old policy playbook of how to do these things, that's why it's been stymied for however many years. But I think it's going to take some creative innovation, which I think entrepreneurs have a lot of, to be able to say, hey, we can work around some of these things, and we can pull in some help from different places. And I think why then the question then becomes, why are you running for the county and not for the town? And there's a political reason for that. But the logistical reason, after talking with so many different people, Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, was that the District 5 seat in the Putnam County Legislature is the only elected office that represents the constituents of Carmel Hamlet and of the downtown area of Kent. Whereas the other legislators who touch the town of Carmel, it's all Mayapack. So so the town of Carmel actually has 4 legislators that touch it on the Putnam County Legislature, by far the most of any town in the county.
Mhm.
3 of them, it's all Mayapack. The other one that I'm running for is Carmel Hamlet, and I think there's an opportunity to use that position to work with our local town government, to work with the state, to work with whomever, to try to find a way to make Carmel Hamlet a little bit better.
I think it's an excellent spot, because I was surprised how the towns and the county legislators and the town supervisors seemed separated over here.
Well-
In our town, it's interesting that but the legislator and the town supervisor are very tight.
Yeah, if you follow me on Facebook, okay,
Yeah,
and you can do that just by searching my name, Brett Yarris. I put out a newsletter that talks about a lot what's going on, especially at the county legislature, with video and everything else. And the reason I do that is because a lot of people don't realize the interactivity between the governments and how important it is to have a strong one. I'll tell you a great guy who does this is legislator Bill Gouldman of Putnam Valley. He's a Republican. He's a phenomenal guy. I've had a great opportunity to speak with him. And one of the things he does, he makes an effort to go to town board meetings.
Yeah, no, he and Jackie are Jacqueline. She's been a guest on our show.
I'm a big fan of Ms. Anavi. I think she's incredible. I've had a great time these last couple of weeks of not just getting to know her, but getting to see her put her advocacy for her people in action. And I think Bill's done a great job of that too. And I think that's what you see when you have a county representative and a town representative coming together for the people that they jointly represent. And I think that there's probably a missing opportunity. It's hard, I would say, for whoever is the town supervisor of Carmel to do that, because they've got 4 legislators they've got to deal with.
Sure.
But I do think that what's been missing from District 5, the Carmel Hamlet portion of it, is somebody advocating specifically for the needs of Carmel Hamlet, because we do get lost. Mayapack doesn't consider us part of Carmel. Kent doesn't consider us part of Kent, and we're sort of kind of left scrambling a little bit. So that was the reason I got into exploring whether or not I was going to become a candidate. So when I was exploring that phase, I really started going to the legislature meetings. And then when I saw how those things go,
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this is much bigger than that. This whole thing is broken. And so the more I've gone and they've talked about things that are you can, again, there are videos of me talking to the legislature, advocating on certain policy
You're good
points.
on this.
And so my positions are not a secret, and I go into the lion's den and argue those points directly to them. And you can see it's much bigger than that. I mean, we're talking about this body can't even get the basics done without an uproar or some hidden veil of secrecy or telling somebody one thing and then doing another, which came to a head the other night.
Yeah.
And so that's that.
So this is giving you an opportunity to be part of Putnam County, but obviously represent the area that you're really speaking about, really,
Yeah.
from Hamlet, both
Yeah.
at the same time. And I think that, what I'm gathering from you is the fact that you're ready to bring a fresh set of ideas, speak your voice, and really kind of maybe rattle the cage a little bit, which I think we probably need.
Yeah, I think that we went through my whole history since I'm 21 years old, right? I'm not a politician. I've not been in politics. And I don't see this inherently as needing to be the same old politics. And I think you're seeing that from me. I would argue that there's a lot of people who are in the political sphere of Putnam County who don't know what to do with me because I'm not playing by the same set of rules or the same playbook that they would use. And the reason for that is because I'm authentic. If you've heard me talk and you've seen me talk at these meetings, it's coming out raw and unfiltered. I don't go up there with prepared statements. I'm not reading from a script. I'm speaking from the heart. And I think what's been fascinating, you mentioned Putnam County, right? The District 5 seat represents Carmel Hamlet, but it has to operate within the fact and the constructs of Putnam County as a whole.
Sure.
And one of the issues that's been huge is the farmers issue. What's going on with the farmers in our county? And to me, that kind of slid across my desk as like, hey, this is something that's going on. You should know about it. And then I read what's going on.
You've jumped in.
I'm like, how in the world is this like just a casual, like thrown aside here, something you should know about? I'm like, well, this is a massive issue that goes well beyond Putnam County. And so I met and spoke with the farmers directly and tried to understand the issue a little bit more. And once I spoke with them and I saw all kinds of documents and all these different things, it became something, that I really became cared about because no, they don't live in Carmel Hamlet. We have one farm in Carmel Hamlet. A lot of these farms are from all over Putnam County. But in Putnam County, these are our neighbors. I just mentioned if you live in Carmel Hamlet, you've got to go to Patterson if you want to do something fun. You got to go to Maybe. You got to go to these places. And so these are our neighbors. And it really gets down to just this other, this issue of, are we good neighbors? Do we remember in this world, the way it is constructed right now, how to be a good neighbor? And I think that's a big issue. Is like we listen to somebody talk in a political environment, and the first thing we want to know is, are they Democrat or Republican? And then, but depending on an answer, we go, I hate them, no matter what they're saying. Or we go, I love them, no matter what they're saying. And I think what we've then forgotten is that in this place, in the local governments of Putnam County and our towns, none of that matters. The party is irrelevant. We are literally talking about our neighbors.
Yeah.
We're talking about the people that when a storm comes through and knocks siding off their house, we're going to go next door and help them pick them up. When the snow comes in and it's got 36 inches and you've got an elderly person next door, you're going to go next door and you're going to shovel. And we've forgotten that. When we go do those things, we don't go, hey, I'd like to help shovel your driveway, but real quick, are you Republican or Democrat? we don't do those things.
You don't.
But the legislature in Putnam County does those things.
Yeah.
They do those things.
So I should tell you, Brett, that Nick in particular has been very good about this podcast because we've had several new political entrants, a couple of them who have come and successfully run for positions on the town board. So you're helping us with a tradition of introducing change into the political process, and we appreciate you coming. We're probably going to have to wrap it up a little bit. Is there something you want to tell the audience that as future entrepreneurs they should remember? Yeah, the biggest thing is don't be afraid to take the risk. You want your risks that you do take to be calculated. You want to make sure you know everything about them going in. This way you don't make a bad decision. But at some point, to really
make it, to really push yourself into a new area of being that you've been afraid to go into, you're going to have to take that jump. You're going to have to take that risk. When I started the behavior movement, okay, my daughter was just a couple months old. I had a I had a very fine position as a teacher and a behavior case manager at a private school that I could have worked there as long as I wanted to. Okay. But to get to where I needed to be as a person, there was a risk I needed to take. And I'll tell you what, taking that risk was the best thing I ever did because I had a daughter who was only a couple months old. I couldn't fail. I couldn't fail. If I failed, I was letting more than just me down. And that's the value in taking a risk, because then you learn what you're willing to do to make sure you succeed. And I think that's the biggest thing is don't be afraid to take that risk, because you're going to discover something about yourself that you probably didn't know until you did.
Man,
Wow, that's what a good comment.
This may have been the easiest podcast we've ever had to do because you got it, you get it. You're the way you talk about it and the way you could see that it's here. It's in you, and that's what you care about. You're an inspiration to me. You're an inspiration to our listeners for sure.
I appreciate that.
I think that I can speak for the Putnam County Business Council, excuse me, and say that we are on your side and that we certainly look forward to working with you further because you get it.
I appreciate that, and I really, thank you guys for bringing me on. It's been a while since I've been able to do a podcast since my name became. That's right. So it's been really great, and I love everything that you guys are doing here. That you give people, entrepreneurs here, a platform and opportunity to learn, to better themselves, and that's what they're doing when they take chances on themselves. And you guys are giving them that opportunity and that education. So thank you for what you guys are doing.
That's great, Brett. Thanks for coming, buddy.
Awesome.
We're not going to lose track of you.
Appreciate it.
I'll be around.